Books in Focus. I'm going to start with the new upcoming fiction. So, James Patterson, 23rd Midnight. This is the 23rd book in his Women's Murder Club series. And in this one, you got a copycat killer who's recreating murders committed by a serial killer that the women helped put away previously. Identity by Nora Roberts. This is a new thriller. And in this one, you have a young woman who's trying to escape a killer who killed her best friend. Well, a friend at least. I don't know how close they were. He killed her friend, and now he's trying to kill her. The Wedding Planner. You have a successful unmarried wedding planner. She's had 2 failed engagements. She isn't wanting to get married herself, despite her love for weddings. But the handsome brother, one of her grooms, may just change her thinking on that point. Killing Moon is Joe Nesbo's latest in the Harry Houlet mystery/thriller series. Someone's murdering young women in Oslo, and a woman who once saved Harry's life is in danger. The Bride That Wore White by Amanda Quick. This is the 7th book in the Burning Cove series, which I think it's one of those series that's mostly connected by the location, Burning Cove. I don't think it's consistent characters. But this one's about a psychic who is framed by a killer client, but finds help in the mysterious associate of a crime boss. Nancy Thayer has one coming out called All the Days of Summer. This is set on the island of Nantucket. It's a hopeful novel about a woman with a failed marriage looking for a new start, but she also has to overcome the differences she has with her son's girlfriend, whose family also lives on the island. And then we have The Half Moon by Mary Beth Keane. This novel takes place over the course of 1 week. It's about a middle-aged couple in a small town navigating the complexities of marriage, family, and longing. And then lastly, Tom Hanks has a book coming out called The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece. I'm just going to read directly from the blurb. A novel about the making of a star-studded, multi-million-dollar superhero action film and the humble comic books that inspired it. Funny, touching, and wonderfully thought-provoking, while also capturing the changes in America and American culture since World War II.
Then we also have upcoming nonfiction. The first one is a new biography titled Martin Luther King Jr. titled King. It offers a contemporary and complex portrait of the man, his triumphs, his failings, and his legacy as a great leader. And it's described as having evocative and eloquent prose. And then Quietly Hostile by Samantha Ibrahim, which I love the cover. This is a collection of essays that promises to take you on a delightful, hilarious, and poignant tour of all of the details and shenanigans that make up the true portrait of life today. His Majesty's Airship is a stunning new historical narrative nonfiction that details the rise and fall of the world's largest airship and a doomed love story. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to give you more on that one. The next one we have is actually a bit unusual. So usually we don't talk about cookbooks during Books in Focus. But this one I felt that we needed to, because this is the 3rd installment of the Magnolia Table Cookbook Collection from Joanna Gaines. This one is described as being full of warmth and compassion, and you get more of a sense that she's talking to you through the pages, which is pretty nifty. And I've been told that the recipes in here are delightful, to say the least. The next is the Book of Charlie. So just want you to take a moment to think about, what have you seen in your lifetime? Charlie White was born before radio and has lived long enough to learn how to use a smartphone. This is a remarkable book full of his wit and wisdom from someone who's virtually seen almost everything. Just kind of entertaining to think about. When the Heavens Went on Sale is a book that centers around the remarkable unfolding story of the frenzied intergalactic, and I use big air quotes, land grab in space from private companies as they rush to build cheap space vehicles and outcompete each other. The First Lady of World War II is a book about Eleanor Roosevelt, and it is reported to be the first full account of her trip to the Pacific theater during World War II. From what I'm told, there were several commanders who were not thrilled. Yep. I wasn't gonna name names, but
Not wanted there.
at all, and she charmed not only him, but a lot of others to make that trip possible.
She went from bed to bed, every one of the hospitals that she visited.
Oh, yeah. So the nice thing is that you get a really full chronicle of that trip and of those visits and everything there. So I'm really, really looking forward to this one. And then finally we are sticking around for World War II is The Fatherland, a memoir of war, conscience, and family secrets. So what would you do if you discovered your grandfather was a Nazi? This is one grandson's story of trying to discover more about his family and do research into the truth of who his grandfather was. He learned that his grandfather has the dual reputation in a small village in France of ruling that village with an iron fist, but also then using his position to protect those who lived in the village. So there's a lot of things going on here. It promises to be a very emotional and powerful read about what families do and understanding that legacy. So yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On His Majesty's airship, are you going to tell us which His Majesty it is?
My understanding is that it is, and if I'm remembering the blurb correctly, I think it's King George the Fourth. It would be Queen Elizabeth II, her grandfather, if I'm remembering
George
correctly.
V.
Good.
Thank you. Sorry, I lose track. There's so many of
That's
them.
why I explain that to Becky all the time. We go through the hierarchy.
Yeah, and I lose track. I believe it's him, but I would need to double check that for you.
George Floyd.
Yep.
George the Fifth.
I know the third we don't like, just as a rule.
Okay, Private Life of Spies and the Exquisite Art of Getting Even by Alexander McCall Smith. He is well known for his #1 Ladies Detective Agency series. This one is actually a short story collection. Half spy stories, half stories of revenge, hence the title. In one story, a spy dropped deep into enemy territory manages to disguise himself quite convincingly as a nun. In another, an invitation to join the Vatican's Secret Service sends a prospective operative down a rabbit hole of controversy and confusion. A third story finds an author on the brink of public ruin, seeing the error of his ways after an act of kindness saves the day. So, despite the spy and revenge theme, these are generally warmer and lighter in tone. There's some humor there. Couple read-alikes, so just in terms of spy short stories, you of course have Ian Fleming, For Your Eyes Only, and then Tom Hanks has this book, Uncommon Type, which are, again, kind of smart, short, heartwarming stories. This next one, as you can probably tell, is some historical nonfiction, kind of fictional biography of Teddy Roosevelt by Jeff Shara, who's a well-known author of historical fiction books. This book covers Roosevelt's life from his upbringing in the rarefied air of New York society of the late 19th century to his time in the rough and tumble world of the Badlands in the Dakotas, from his rise from political obscurity to Assistant Secretary of the Navy, from national hero as the leader of the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American Wars to his accidental rise to the presidency itself. So this is a glowing tribute to Roosevelt. As you can see, it covers pretty much the entire span of his life. If you like Roosevelt and you like historical fiction featuring Roosevelt, Those are the read-alikes here. If a Poem Could Live and Breathe by Mary Calvi. This one's more on the romantic side of things, where she uses real love letters that were written between Roosevelt, and I'm not sure who the woman is, but Alice, what's her name?
First life.
Okay. So that's kind of the source material for that one. That's also a new one, so that's still on the new shelf. And then you have The Perilous Adventures of the Cowboy King by Jerome Charring, which again is a fictional account of Roosevelt's life.
Okay, the first book for me to talk about today is The Covenant of Water. And The Covenant of Water is by Abraham Verghese. It is literary fiction, and it covers 1900 to 1977. It's described as an epic of love, faith, and medicine set in South India, follow 3 generations of one family. This family has a strange secret. At least once each generation, a family member dies by drowning. We meet our protagonist, who is known as Begamachi. She is 12 years old when we meet her, and she is grieving the death of her father. She's sent by boat to her wedding, where she will meet her 40-year-old husband for the first time. And then from this unforgettable new beginning, the young girl and future matriarch of her family will witness unthinkable changes over the span of an extraordinary life, full of joy, triumph, as well as hardship and loss. Her faith and love are the only constants in her life. For first of all, I chose one of Verghese's earlier works, The Cutting of Stone. That's a young.
That was one
You've read it. Okay, good,
Yes.
good. So I'll give you a synopsis. Everybody's shaking their head. Except for Ian. Okay. Young medical doctor escapes Ethiopia, comes to the U.S., and works very hard for a poor New York City clinic, and gets very wrapped up in his life there, and he's got secrets, and things catch up. And then I also brought along The Mirror Made of Rain, class tradition in contemporary India, and Victory City, which is one of my more recent favorites. This is my favorite, Salman Rushdie. I've read several, and it is based in mythology, but it's just a very interesting story about not life in India necessarily, but just life and how we operate as human beings and interact. There's a little magical realism, some mythology, but it's a lot of fun. Justin Cronin's The Ferryman. It is about a group of survivors who are on a hidden island utopia. And it is, the protagonist is Proctor Bennett, who is, works for the Department of Social Contracts, and his career is as a ferryman. When people are designated, it is their time to retire, he gently shepherds them through the process. And when it's necessary, he has to enforce it. So he takes the folks who are retiring to an island known as the Nursery, which isn't insulting at all. But anyway, the island, the name of the island is Prospera, and the citizens there enjoy a long and happy lives. Their lives are fulfilling, but when their monitors, which are embedded in their forearms, begin to lose power, then it's time for them to be taken on the ferry ride.
Is it a one-way trip?
It is a one-way trip. You get a one-way ticket. So Proctor, at some point in our story, begins dreaming, and this is supposed to be impossible on this island. The people are not supposed to be able to dream. So he knows something is up, and then his own monitor percentage decreases very quickly. A resistance group starts making noise on the island. They're known as the Arrivalists. And support staff, the laborers, they are starting to question their place in the hierarchy. So Utopia's getting a little bit of rumbles. And Proctor's own father enters the ferry, and as he is exiting the ferry, he whispers a cryptic message to Proctor that causes him to question everything. So it sounds like we're gonna have a little bit of mystery and a little bit of family stuff and question what is fulfilling, who decides what is fulfilling life, what makes that valuable to individuals. So I grabbed, this is a trilogy. So Justin Cronin has written a trilogy before this. We do have all three, but this is number 2. Number 1 is checked out right now, but it's The Passage, The City of Mirrors, and The 12. So there are 3 books. This is, if you're interested in anything that he's written previously. And then as Rita likes, I chose Sun by Lowry, who, I mean, the author has written several, usually dystopian. This is from teen fiction, but I thought it was worth grabbing anyway. This is a story of also a utopia. A young woman has a child, and she knows she's supposed to have the child, and the child moves on to the nurturing center, but she finds herself not wanting that to happen, and it happens anyway. And then Zone 1, that's by Colson Whitehead, which I thought was interesting. I believe it was published in 2012, so he's been around a while. And it is this is the street sweeper units who are tasked with clearing the feral zombies from the streets of Manhattan after the plague.
Alright, so this is Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. 2 strangers, Fern and Will, meet and share an undeniable connection and a day-long adventure. They promise that a year from that day, they're gonna meet again at this place in Toronto where they first met. Fern keeps that promise, Will does not. This is a bittersweet contemporary romance with well-developed realistic characters, and it's described as being something that is sure to please as Will re-enters Fern's life in an unexpected way. The first read-alike I have is Normal People by Sally Rooney. It is a similar exploration of how people can come in and out of your life. Connell is a popular sports star. Marianne is a proud and independent lady. When Connell comes to pick up his mother from a job at Marianne's house, the two begin to share a strange connection that will start them on, that will stay with them, that will stay with them as their lives intertwine in a unique and complex love story that talks about entanglement and friendship. And then the other read-alike, which unfortunately was checked out this morning, was Every Summer After, also by Carly Fortune. It is a sweeping look at love and the people and choices that will mark us forever, told over the span of 5 years and 1 weekend specifically. We follow Persephone Fraser as she falls in and out of the orbit of her friend and occasional lover, Sam. So this new book is The Poisoner's Ring by Kelly Armstrong. It is the second of the Rip Through Time series. Modern-day homicide detective Mallory Atkins is adjusting to her new life in Victorian Scotland. And you heard me right. Victorian Scotland. Her employer knows that she is not the maid that she appears to be, despite inhabiting his maid's body. She is there to investigate a powerful new poison that is causing men to drop like flies. Everyone is being watched as the investigation takes several twists and turns in this intricately plotted historical mystery. The first read-alike I have is actually first in the series, A Rip Through Time. We first meet Mallory in 2019. She's a homicide detective in Edinburgh, and she is drawn into an alleyway where she is attacked and loses consciousness. She wakes up not only to discover that she is now 150 years in the past, but she's not even in her own body anymore. So this is a very compelling and unique series opening that mixes historical detail and just the right blend of mystery and a little bit of magic. The other read-alike I have, the first thing I thought of when time traveling and Scotland, is the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. Thank you. I was gonna say something very wrong. Also because of the similar time travel female protagonist set in Scotland, it is the story of Claire. She is a World War II British nurse, and after wandering through a set of standing stones, she finds herself transported back to Scotland amid the Jacobite rebellion. She feels caught in the middle, and her only chance for safety is with the gallant young Scottish warrior named Jamie Fraser. This also has a strong sense of place and historical detail.
Okay, this one's called Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. It's described as chilling, hilarious, and timely. You have a young mid-list author who steals the work of her more successful Asian American author friend who dies. Okay, so she publishes this friend's work under her own name, and it's a novel about Chinese laborers during World War I. And then after the novel becomes a smashing success, she has to try and protect her secret and also has to navigate backlash from the Asian American community. It's written in an immersive first-person voice, and as you can tell, there's going to be themes of diversity, racism, cultural appropriation, and really, apparently this is kind of a satire on the publishing industry. So, a couple read-alikes. You have The Other Black Girl, which is about two black women who are working together as the only black employees at a New York City book publishing company. This one is more of a thriller as opposed to satire. And then Members Only, in this one, an Indian man faces backlash from the white members of his posh country club, tennis club, after he makes a racist joke. So this one's more in the humor vein. Similar themes.
I'm going to talk to you now about Goodnight Irene by Alberto Luis Urrea. This is historical fiction. It's coming out at the end of May. And the time period is World War II and the place is Europe. 1943, we meet Irene Woodward. She's left an abusive fiance in New York and enlisted in the Red Cross and headed to Europe. She makes fast friends in training with Dorothy Dunford, a Midwesterner with a ferocious wit. They are part of an elite group of women nicknamed Donut Dollies, who command the military vehicles who command military vehicles called clubmobiles at the front line, providing camaraderie and a taste of home that may be the only solace before troops head into battle. After D-Day, the two friends join the Allies, streaming into France. From the Battle of the Bulge to the liberation of Buchenwald, they are embroiled in danger. Their friendship, through her friendship with Dorothy, and a love affair with a courageous American fighter named Hans, Irene learns to trust again. Her most fervent hope, which becomes more precious by the day, is for all three of them to survive the war. This is taken, the inspiration for this is taken from the real experience of the author's mother. So she did join the Red Cross and participate in World War II, and had the experience of finding a dear friend that way. He also wrote The House of Broken Angels. This is about a family on the U.S.-Mexico border, and the family comes together to say goodbye to their dying patriarch. A little more multi-generational, perhaps. And then familiar ones, the stories, Nightingale in Transcription. Nightingale is also about the invasion in France, and Transcription is about young women who are housed in an apartment with thin walls, and on the other side of the wall there are Nazi plotters, and they write down everything they hear between those conversations from the apartment next door. So also World War II.
Witch King by Martha Wells. This is the first fantasy that Martha Wells has written in about over a decade. It's got a large cast of characters. It's been described as wildly original and complex. You have a demon prince who, along with a team of companions, previously saved the world. He wakes up in his tomb with no memory of how he got there, has to find out what's the dealio. You got rebellion, betrayal, friendship, are all themes in the book. A couple real likes. First of all, you have Child of a Mad God by R.A. Salvatore. That one's about a young woman who has to learn how to use the mysterious power of her tribe's coven to attain freedom from the rule of barbarians. And then The High Mountain Court, which I believe I got off the new shelf, is about a young witch who is also the last of her kind. She has to team up with a neighboring prince to save her people from an evil king. Titanium Noir by Nick Harkaway. Got some good review quotes here. A beautifully twisted, fast-paced, neo-cyberpunk fairy tale. An entertaining shaggy dog of a futuristic whodunit. And a virtuosic mashup of Philip K. Dick and Raymond Chandler by way of Marvel. So, yeah, you have a dystopian near future society. The main character is a detective by the name of Cal Sounder, and he is investigating the murder of what is called a Titan, which is one of society's most powerful members. They are the medically enhanced elite class. One of them has been murdered. He's investigating it. And apparently his former girlfriend was the daughter of one of these Titans as well. If you're into dystopian noir thrillers, you can check out The Night Market by Jonathan Moore. This is a near future thriller, very noirish as well. Detective main character investigating a conspiracy. And then Fugitive Telemetry, which is by Martha Wells, who we just talked about with the new Witch King book coming out. This is part of the Murderbot Diaries series that you may have heard me mention before. But the main character in that series is a cyborg, essentially human/robot, and this book, or really a novella in particular, is basically a murder mystery where he is trying to figure out why someone was killed on this particular space station.
So this is Bad Bad Seymour Brown by Susan Isaacs, and yeah, I dare you not to sing the Jim Croce song. Just a
I
little
thought for sure she was gonna come out and say that.
Oh, I thought about it, but I didn't want to subject anyone to that. So this is the second installment of the Corey Geller series. Corey has asked her parents to move in with her in the suburbs. She figures they will be a perfect fit. It's a quiet neighborhood, and it is the kind of the picture that she wants since she has left the FBI terrorist task force. She is officially retired. But everything changes when she and her retired NYPD detective father are contacted by April Brown, a victim from one of Detective Geller's unsolved cases with the NYPD. This is described as having an interesting cast of characters. It's tightly plotted and hits just the right notes. And again, I dare you not to sing the song. I thought I heard it. So the first read-alike I have is actually the first in the series, which takes one to know one. So here we are introduced to Corey Geller, who has just retired from the FBI and moved to the suburbs with her new husband and adopted daughter. Everything seems to be fine when her longtime friend Peter starts turning up and something is off. She can tell that he is hiding something. She has to figure out what it is or if she's just imagining it. It is also described as fast-paced, witty, with unique twists and turns that will keep you guessing. The other read-alike that was checked out fairly recently was Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Rayburn, also with a unique cast of retired characters. Billy, Mary Alice, Helen, and Natalie are being sent on an all-expenses-paid vacation to mark their retirement after 40 years of service at the museum. The museum is a clandestine international group of assassins, but these women quickly learn that this retirement gift isn't what it seems in this action-packed, gritty thriller. You learn very quickly not to mess with women of a certain age, which is
The Swamp Story. This is a humorous fiction, takes place in current times, Everglades, Florida. I don't know if you've read any of his previous books. Those are pretty consistent things. He had this new caper is full of oddballs. It has more twists and turns than a snake slithering away from a gator. Jessie Braddock is trapped in a tiny cabin deep in the Everglades with her infant daughter and her ex-boyfriend. He was pretty on the outside, but not on the inside. That's why he's her ex-man. In her desperate attempt to get away, she stumbles across a long-lost treasure. The problem is someone very bad is also looking for the treasure, and they know that she has it. So let the games begin. And meanwhile, Ken Bortle of Bortle Brothers Bait and Beer has hatched a scheme to lure tourists to his failing store by making viral videos of the Everglades melon monster. The monster is in fact an unemployed alcoholic newspaper man named Phil, who is wearing a Dora the Explorer costume head. Incredibly, his plan works. And hordes of TikTokers swarm to the swamp in search of the monster. At the same time, the villains are on the hunt for Jessie's treasure. So amid the mayhem, a presidential hopeful arrives in the Everglades to start his campaign, and needless to say, nothing goes as planned. This is, after all, Florida. In addition to one of Dave Barry's previous works, they're Tricky Business, is that what I grabbed? Yeah, Tricky Business. And then Tim Dorsey, he's just always funny. Has anyone read him? Pretty entertaining. Similar story types of stories. The Mermaid Confidential is Serge Storm, that's the detective. Serge Storm, a crime caper. And then Squeeze Me by, I gotta get the name right, Hyacinth. That is a social political intrigue on Florida's Gold Coast. All of those have their own distinct types of humor that will make us laugh a little bit. No Two Persons by Erica Bauermeister is women's literature. Takes place in current times, and our protagonist is Alice. Alice has always wanted to be a writer. She has talent in abundance, but her stories remain safe and detached until a devastating personal event breaks her heart, and then she creates her stunning debut novel. Her words find their way to many readers, from a teenager hiding home from homelessness, to a freediver who's pushing himself beyond endurance, an artist who's furious at the world, and a bookseller who's in search of love, a widower rent by grief. And each of these people are drawn to Alice's novel and discover something different that alters their perspective and presents new pathways forward for them in their lives. One book, 9 readers, 10 stories. No Two Persons reveals how books can affect us in the most beautiful and unexpected of ways, and how we are all more closely connected to one another than we might think. I brought The Scent Keeper. This is Bauermeister's one of her previous works. This is, interestingly enough, it's about fragrance and memory and how those things that you share with family.
Wasn't there, was it on an island?
Yeah, we read it for.
Oh, you read it? Oh, okay, yeah,
It's
okay.
That was excellent.
Did you like it?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's really
good,
good.
yeah, I thought it looked like a good one. And I also chose a read-alike called Calling for a Blanket Dance, and everything on the computer says it's here, but I'll be darned if I can find it. But it's about finding your way and holding on and sticking to your need for community.
What was the name of it?
So that's Calling for a Blanket Dance. And Hickea is the author, Hickeah. What's the author's name for that read?
Okay, so Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Cause is a horror novella. You have a voiceless mermaid and a plague doctor who are working to save children in the deep dark woods from 3 magical beings who demand their sacrifices. I got another group of really great quotes to read to you, after which I'm sure you will all be clamoring to get this book on hold. A feverishly gory, grotesquely beautiful, and Baroque fairy tale meets love sonnet. Okay? Caw uses poetically beautiful words to tear open your chest and gnaw on your ribs in this needle-sharp novella. And then lastly, a brutal and deadly romp whose language is as sharp and glittery as a scalpel made of ice. So this is horror, it's violent, it's gory, it's dark. If you're into that, you can check out her previous work, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, which is a creepy haunted house tale that is steeped in Japanese folklore. And also, this is another new one, collection of dark short stories. The Trees Grew Because I Bled There by Eric LaRocca. Okay, so The Quantum Solution, this is the 4th book in a series, the Evan Ryder series by Eric Van Lustbader. So this is an action-packed international thriller. You have the main character is a female intelligence field agent, which is confusing because her name is Evan, so I didn't think she'd be a woman, but it's a woman named Evan. Field agent. This one features weaponized quantum technology. You have an elite Russian scientist and the American Secretary of Defense. They both die at the same time from inexplicable, sudden catastrophic brain damage, suspiciously. And Ryder and her partner are then called to investigate and they're trying to essentially avoid an all-out war with Russia. If you want to read the first in the series, that's going to be the Nemesis Manifesto. And in that one, Ryder investigates a hostile cabal behind the assassinations of her fellow agents. Good read-alike for this kind of stuff would be Brad Thor's Scott Harvath thriller series, book one of which is The Lions of Lucerne. And that series is about a disavowed Secret Service agent. The Girl by the Bridge. So this is a book that was originally published in Iceland. It's chilling, it's eerie, complex plot, brisk pacing, set in Reykjavik. You have an absent-minded former policeman named Conrad who is haunted by the murder of his father. A girl has drowned in the local city pond, and he is asked to help because of the rapport he already has with the girl's grandparents. A theme in this one is broken dreams. If you wanna, so this is, I don't know if this is book 2 or 3, but the first book is The Darkness Knows up here. And in that one, the main character, again, Conrad, he returns to a cold case that has been weighing on his mind for decades. And a similar read would be The Darkness by Ragnar Jonasson. This is another Icelandic author, I think also translated, but it is again set in Reykjavik. You have an aging female detective investigating the death of a young woman whose body was found washed up on Iceland's shore. So very similar tone.
Sunny Hostin. This is number 2 in her series that she's titled Summer. Summer on Sag Harbor is women's literature. Our protagonist is Olivia Jones. She is very successful, New York City financial whiz. She's blazed a career that has allowed her to meet many of her dreams, and she decides to step back, and she finds a place on Sag Harbor where there's a close-knit community of African American elites that have been vacationing on those beautiful beaches since the 1930s. Her outward success was never able to fill the gaping hole she carries. What happened to her biological father, a police officer unjustly killed when she was a little girl? So she moves to this idyllic place. She forms friendships in the neighborhood. Kara is an ambitious art curator. Whitney is the wife of an ex-basketball player and the current president of the Sag Harbor Homeowners Association. Garrett is a sexy new neighbor and a single father. Mr. Whittingham is a kind older gentleman who she discovers is not without his own secrets. Each relationship is there to teach her more about who she is. Livia's search for her authentic identity in the secret history of her family and her fight to preserve her new Black utopia leads her to redefine the meaning of love, friendship, community, and family. The first in Miss Hostin's series was Summer on the Bluffs, and another read-alike that I brought along was one of my favorite books ever, Terry McMillan's How Stella Got Her Groove Back. So that too is a story about life disrupted and hitting the beach, and good things then begin to happen. The King's Pleasure by Alison Weir is her latest contribution to the world of historical fiction. This is the number 2 in her Tudor Rose series. This one focuses on King Henry VIII in an interesting way. This explores a private side of the legendary king in his dramatic and brutal 36-year reign. Young Henry began as a magnificent and chivalrous Renaissance prince who embodied every virtue. He had all the qualities to make a triumph of his kingship. He expanded Parliament. He founded the Royal Navy. He modernized medical training. He composed music and poetry, patronized the arts. To his contemporaries, he was a great king, a legend in his own lifetime, and he left an extraordinary legacy in a modern Britain. But he also broke with the Pope, founded the Church of England, launched a religious revolution that divided his kingdom. He beheaded 2 of his wives. He cast aside 2 others. He died a suspicious, obese, disease-riddled tyrant. His reign is remembered as one of dangerous intrigue and bloodshed, and the truth is far more complex. Stymied by the imperative to produce a male heir, he was as much a victim of circumstances as his unhappy wives. Right? That's always been the thing about Henry VIII that has fascinated me, though, from a historical perspective, was that he did begin as this bright, shining star who possessed every skill and attribute, and it just totally, bottomed out. For read-alikes, I did bring Alison Weir's Elizabeth of York, and also Philippa Gregory's The White Princess. This is about Elizabeth of York was King Henry's mom. So she married Henry VII and was the mother to Henry VIII and his brother Arthur. She was the daughter of Elizabeth and Edward. Edward IV. They had a very idyllic marriage, produced a lot of children, and Edward IV was the brother of Richard III, and we all know what happened to Richard III. So a very interesting time in history with some interesting personalities.
So this is Nona Marie and the Case of the Stolen Necklace by Lorenzo Carsatera. This is the second installment of the Nona Marie series. She has a lot on her plate right now, but seemingly 2 unconnected crimes are committed, and she is asked by the city elders to spring into action to discover the truth. This is described as a charming amateur sleuth mystery with a strong sense of place, because we're in an island off of the coast of Napoli. So very much a place I think we can all agree that we'd love to visit. And it's just described as she's described as just a fun and interesting character. The first read-alike I have is the very first one in the series, which is The Case of the Missing Bride, where we are introduced to our protagonist and her life on an Italian isle. A young woman comes to her pleading for help, and she helps her to escape her own wedding. And then she also starts to investigate the groom-to-be and discovers that there's some dark things going on in this village on this island that seem out of place. These are both leisurely paced, cozy mysteries full of fun characters and that very strong sense of place. When thinking about this one, the fact that she's such a fun character, the thing that popped into my head was The Maid by Nita Prose, just because she's also centered around a fun, interesting female protagonist. This one, though, is Molly Gray, who actually, unlike Nona, struggles with social skills. She, though, has an obsessive love of cleaning, and her job as a maid at the Regency Grand Hotel is perfect for her. But everything is upended when she enters a suite with a dead guy. Because of her differences from others, police automatically suspect her of the crime, and this story explores what it means to be different and how we connect to the world around us. This one is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. So what would you do if you were trying to learn a new skill? Practice, right? Well, according to my band director, perfect practice makes perfect, lousy practice makes lousy. It's a whole thing. You are welcome, Mr. Stoller. Our protagonist is Amy Walker. She is happy with a quiet life running her flower shop in Rome, Kentucky. But she is on the quest to find the perfect companion that fits in with her quiet lifestyle. She's gone on several dates, and when she overhears one of her dates describing her as boring, she decides she needs practice becoming the fun, flirty protagonist that she loves in her favorite movies. So she enlists an old friend named Will to be her tutor. This is described as a breezy, lighthearted romance, perfect summer read about how opposites attract and it'll help you slow down and smell the flowers. Sorry, you know me, I don't forget that. This is actually quasi part of a series. So the first read-alike I have is When in Rome, also by Sarah Adams. It is set in Rome, Kentucky, which is the main connection for her other books. It is also a story that looks at how opposites attract. So this centers around Amelia Rose, who has become a TikTok sensation, and Noah Walker, the owner of a local pie shop. They are thrown together by a faulty car in a cozy town that is loose. This is a heartwarming story that is loosely based on Audrey Hepburn's Roman Holiday, although I think she went to real Rome, not Rome, Kentucky, but close enough. We're on a budget. And then the other read-alike I have is It Happened One Summer, thank you for laughing at my bad jokes, by Tessa Bailey. This is also considered a sweet summer romance and was also checked out this morning. It sets a fashionable online influencer named Piper on a collision course with Brandon, a gruff, down-to-earth fisherman, when she is forced to go to Westport, which is a small fishing village in the Pacific Northwest, to reconnect with her past. This was actually nominated as one of the best romances in 2021.
Anyway, the next book for me to talk about is Halcyon, which is very exciting for me because that's one of my favorite words in the English language. This book is science fiction by Elliot Ackerman. It is recent past, 2004, takes place in Virginia, and it's a reimagining of historical things that went on. In this book, Al Gore is entertaining his second term as president, and Martin Newman, recently divorced, is living in Halcyon, which is the estate of renowned lawyer and World War II hero Robert Abelson. When the news breaks that scientists funded by the Gore administration have discovered a cure for death, it calls into question everything Martin thought he understood about life, not least of which is his work as a historian. Why did Abelson draw Martin into his orbit? Is this new science a miraculous good or a ridiculous evil, or insidious evil? Stretching from pivotal elections to intimate family secrets, who is Abelson really? Halcyon grapples with what history means, who's affected by it, and how the complexities of our shared future rest on the dual foundations of remembering and forgetting. I grabbed Waiting for Eden by Ackerman, if you're interested in getting a little taste of how he writes. This is a story about a soldier coming home from World War II and trying to put his life together and make it make sense. And for alternate history adventures, I grabbed Turtle Dove's Atlantis and Other Stories. It's short stories about giving historical events alternate endings. And of course, the granddaddy of them all to give historical events alternate endings, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Fortunately, that book has been stolen from the library, so we don't have the book, but we do have the book on CD. It's also available digitally. Okay, Dances is by Nicole Cuffey, and this is a debut novel from this author. It's contemporary literary fiction. Current time, place New York City. Cece Cordell is our protagonist. She's a trailblazing black ballerina who must reconcile the ever-rising stakes of her grueling career with difficult questions of love, loss, and her journey to self-liberation. Cece is 22 years old, then promoted to principal at the New York City Ballet. She's instantly catapulted into celebrity as the first black ballerina in the famed company's history. Even as she celebrates her achievements, she remains haunted by the feeling that she doesn't belong. She waits for some feeling of rightness that doesn't arrive. She begins to unravel the loose threads of her past, an absent father, a pragmatic mother who always dismissed her ambitions, and a missing older brother who stoked her childhood love of ballet but disappeared to deal with his own demons. Cece is then faced with a choice that has the potential to derail her career and shatter the life she's cultivated, sending her on a pilgrimage to both find her brother and reclaim the parts of herself lost in the grinding machinery of the traditional ballet world. Spellbinding prose and ballet's precise structure brings Cece alive for us as she seeks the answers she needs around being a woman, her art, her power, and how to define her freedom. Read-alikes for this, the most obvious, the one I chose first, but we couldn't put our hands on it here in the library, is the biography of Missy Copeland, and that's called The Wind at My Back. Obvious parallels there. And then also, Hawley's They're Going to Love You. This came off of the new shelf as well. It came out in November though. But it's professional ballet in New York City during the AIDS crisis. So a little bit of different time frame and different set of concerns for the.
So this is The Senator's Wife by Liv Constantine. This is a fast-paced psychological thriller. Salone and her husband, Senator Montgomery, decide that it would be best to hire a home health aide while Salone is recovering from surgery associated with her lupus. Athena, their hired person, seems perfect, and she's able to not only help with Salone's health, but also her foundation, and things are going great. But then Salone's health takes a turn, and she starts to wonder, is it her health or is it Athena? Is she imagining things or is Athena secretly plotting something? This is a domestic thriller. It's riveting and just very fast-paced. The first read-alike I have is The Housekeeper by Joy Fielding. Our protagonist is Jodi Bishop, and she is exhausted from balancing her career, marriage, and the needs of her parents. So she also hires a healthcare professional to help her with her parents. But nothing is as it seems, and I will read you my favorite part of this, which is the line, the blurb from it. In the end, I have only myself to blame. I'm the one who let her in. So, something that'll just keep you guessing. The other read-alike I have that has a similar theme of uncertainty and kind of questioning your perception is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Flynn. It is also a domestic thriller. When Anna, who lives across the street, has the perfect family moving into this seemingly perfect neighborhood. Everything is going well, but then She witnesses something from her window that she shouldn't have, and the question of perfection goes out of it. It sends her world spiraling, and she has to determine what is going on. It's described as a smart, sophisticated story that employs the best of, and this might be a new word, Hitchcockian storytelling. I don't know, Alfred Hitchcock though, it is an homage to him. This is The Bird Hotel by Joyce Maynard. It tells the story of a young American who, after suffering a terrible family tragedy, ends up in a small Central American village, and she starts helping to restore and run a local hotel. Along the way, we meet a rich assortment of characters who live in the village or stay at the hotel over a period of about 4 decades. Though there is a mystery at the center of this hotel, the story is filled with warmth, drama, romance, humor, and a little bit of magical realism. The first read-alike I have is also by Joyce Maynard. It's called Count the Ways. It also has a similar focus on family relationships and kind of rebuilding yourself after things happen, and questions what parents pass to their children. It is also a multi-generational story, though its focus is more on grief and reconciliation. And my understanding is that it also is beautifully written. She has a very specific style, as just a good introduction to her. The other read-alike I have is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It is a translation. It has a similar imaginative story, and it's actually helped to define the genre of magical realism, which is what Bird Hotel is. It focuses on one family's conflicting desire for solitude, but need for love. It is a rich and beautifully described narrative. It is a collaboration by Richard Dawkins and Jana Renova. Got it the second time. Together they weave a fascinating and beautifully illustrated account of how nature and humans have learned to take to the skies. It is described as fascinating, eloquently written, that it is a lovely collaboration between the two of them, one the world's leading zoologist and another a very talented artist, and looks at how we defy gravity. The first read-alike I have is A History of Aviation. They Were There by Peter Weimeister. It is a thorough and meticulously researched history of aviation, and it provides a comprehensive chronology of our attempts to fly. It introduces you not only to pilots, but also to different crews throughout history. Some you may recognize, some you may not. It takes you through their triumphs and tragedies. The other book read-alike I have is The Wonder of Birds by Jim Robbins, which is just the name there is so on the nose. This is a beautifully written book that explores our relationship with birds. And it provides deep insight into the creatures that have fascinated humanity and inspired us to want to fly ourselves. It is enriched with historical and scientific research, and it gives us a very unique perspective on the role birds play in the evolution of human self-awareness.
So Peter Wohlleben, who wrote The Hidden Life of Trees a few years ago, has come out with the new The Power of Trees this coming month. So this is it's a collaboration between him and Jane Billinghurst, and they have written about emerging scientific research about how forests shape climates, both locally and across continents. Evidence that trees naturally adapt to changing environmental conditions and old growth may hold the most survival strategies for climate change. He also takes a look at the forestry management critiquing some of their techniques, including cutting down many trees and then mass planting to replace those trees. Forests are ecosystems that have there are so much more than trees that this can actually lead to an ecological disaster, is his claim. At the heart of the power of trees is Wohlleben passionate plea: our survival is dependent on trusting ancient forests and allowing them to thrive. What do I have here? Forest walking is relatively new by him. Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Smynard. Or is that right? Simar. Okay. Her Finding the Mother Tree is about how the scientific discovery that trees are related. So trees have a genealogy, so to speak, and she describes how finding the science of communication between those trees can help you determine which is the mother tree. And then Evergreen, Saving the Big Forest. This is an interesting collaboration between a biologist and Mr. Reed, who is an economist. So this is addressing specifically megaforests, of which there are only 5 left, with an emphasis on their biodiversity, the cultures, and their impact on the climate. They're very, very important. And then last but not least, I grabbed this from the kids area just because I thought it was an interesting way to learn about this type of work. So this is Wohleben's contribution to junior nonfiction, but it has quizzes and imaginative storytelling, questions, photos, and hands-on activities that you can do to help with the understanding of the importance of trees.
Brave the Wild River is the untold story of 2 women who mapped the botany of the Grand Canyon. So this is the summer of 1938. You have Elzada Clover and Lois Jotter. They ventured down the Colorado River with a team to look at the plant life down in the Grand Canyon, something that had never been done before. At that point in time, the Colorado River was considered the most dangerous river in the world, so they weren't even expected to make it out of it alive. But they did. It's kind of a real-life adventure. The author is a science journalist. If you want to read more about pioneering women in science, you can check out the Doctors Blackwell.
That was interesting.
About 2 sisters who became America's first female doctors and created a hospital for women. And the other book here, The Earth in Her Hands, is actually a bunch of different, not stories per se, but it's a celebration of the contributions women have made to our knowledge of plants. There's over 75 women highlighted in that book. So this is a new book about the Scopes trial, which was prompted in Tennessee when they banned the teaching of evolution in schools in 1925. So you have Clarence Darrow, who's defending the school teacher, John Scopes, and on the opposing side you have William Jennings Bryant. So, 2 famous lawyers going head to head. Freedom of speech is the big theme in this one. Publishers Weekly says, colorful and dramatic, a solid look back at one of the most consequential free speech debates in American history. If you want to learn more about Darrow, we do have a biography on Clarence Darrow by Andrew Kirsten, and you're probably familiar with Inherit the Wind, which is a fictionalized version of the trial. Here's the screenplay, essentially. Well, not screenplay, but what do you call it? Script for the theater play. And we do have it on DVDs. You're all interested in that.
Yeah. Built from the Fire by Victor Luckerson. He is a journalist. He's telling the story of Greenwood, Tulsa from 1914 through present times. This is a multi-generational non-fiction saga of a family and community that in one century survived the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, gentrification, and government policies aimed at erasing it. It weaves together meticulous research and dozens of first-person accounts. It is a beautifully written story, beautifully written work that tells an epic American story. The first read-alike I have is The Groundbreaking by Scott Ellsworth. It is considered the definitive work on the Tulsa Race Massacre. This book looks at not only how the famous Black Wall Street was wiped off the map in the worst single incident of racial violence in US history, but was covered up for more than 50 years. This is also a meticulously researched, well-crafted history, and it is a page-turning reflection on how we as Americans must wrestle with the past of with the parts of our history that we try to bury. The other read-alike I have is The Burning by Tim, I don't know how to pronounce that, we're gonna go with it. Madigan, thank you. That's not what I was gonna go with. It is, with chilly detail, this compelling narrative nonfiction recreates Greenwood at the height of its prosperity and explores the relationships between the Black and white citizens of Tulsa, the hatred, the bigotry, and the resulting horrific massacre, and the silence that followed. Our final book today is Undaunted: How Women Changed American Journalism by Brooke Kroger. It is described as an essential history of women in American journalism. It is a detailed, well-crafted history looking at the triumphs and struggles of female journalists all the way from 1840 through present times. With beautiful and accessible prose, Kroger recounts these stories through the tumultuous points of history and women's fight for equality. The first read-alike I have is Susan, Linda, Nina, and Cookie. This is the extraordinary founding mothers of NPR. This is hey, I'm touching on your book and everything. This is a beautifully written and well-researched history of how four women came together to challenge the conception of what women's work was in news and to shape a network. It is called captivating and powerful. It's somewhere between a biography, media analysis, and business history. And then the other book I have is The Correspondence. It is 6 women writers on the front lines of World War II by Judith Mackerel, and it tells the story of 6 women and their war for equality as they risked their lives to report the news during World War II. It is insightful and well-researched. It weaves together the stories of these fearless and complex women and their contributions not only to the fight, but also to the field of journalism as a whole. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our next Books in Focus session will be on May 9th, and we look forward to seeing you then. Please feel free to stop by the main desk for